Galwan says hi. 3 words from an actor today that have lit up the headlines and triggered a familiar storm of rage on social media. An actor reacting to an Indian Army commander's statement on readiness to recover Pakistan-occupied Kashmir seemed to be jeering at the army by tweeting, "Galwan says hi," basically saying, "Arey Galwan sambhala nahi jata hai, kahan POK ke sapne dekh rahe ho?" A lot of people are angry with this tweet, calling it insensitive, tone-deaf, disrespectful to the army, etc., etc. My own take on it is a little different, viewer, because honestly, I don't think insensitivity or tone-deafness is the crime here, if we're even calling this a crime. Perhaps the actor simply meant, how can you think of pushing the army into mission POK when you cannot handle even a Galwan? To me, what's really sad about those 3 words in that tweet is how wrong and misinformed they are about the Galwan incident, and how it seems to be swayed by propaganda over the last 2 years that Galwan was somehow a humiliation to the Indian Army. I don't believe military operations should be sentimentalized or romanticized. I'm the last person on earth to lecture anyone about the armed forces. Everyone has a right to comment and question. There's nothing sentimental about decisions between life and death. But on Galwan, I personally would rather listen to those who actually did the fighting that night in June 2020 in Ladakh. Some of you may know that I've had the privilege of being the only journalist in the country to interview the men of 16 Bihar Regiment, the unit that fought the Chinese intruders in Galwan. And the truth of what happened, not broadcast loudly with crass clippings and blaring propaganda, courtesy the Chinese, is far from anything that can be captured in a sarcastic 3-word tweet. The Galwan clash, far from being a humiliation or an embarrassment, actually stands as an example of a much smaller Indian force holding its ground and beating back a much larger, treacherous Chinese force that had been ordered to violate half a century of border peace protocols. The result, as everyone knows, was 20 Indian army men killed in action. The truth about the minimum Chinese casualties on site in Galwan that night is now known owing to the operational report that I accessed earlier this year and put out. But that isn't even the point. This isn't some disgusting body count, the kind of cynical, bloodless game that China has played in order to project that India lost more soldiers than they did. On the contrary, the facts prove that the true Chinese losses in Galwan are the principal reason why that country felt the need to blast body count propaganda so relentlessly from the very start. It is this false idea that India was humiliated that seems to have trickled down into that 3-word tweet that's causing so much anger online. Let's make no mistake, the army is not above question and criticism and should never be. There are hard questions to ask about the Galwan incident like we have here on India Today, but to paint what happened in Galwan as anything but an incredible pushback that still reverberates in that part of eastern Ladakh is to miss the point to make a point. Knowing military heroes, viewer, I can tell you that the men killed in action in Galwan aren't demanding sensitivity or even respect. What they do hope for is that the reality of what happened isn't left frozen in the cold.
Military is always ready to make sure that this ceasefire understanding is never broken because it is in interest of both the nations. But if it is broken at any point of time, hum eat ka jawab patthar se denge.
A pledge by a top army general to bring back Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, showing India's steely resolve. But it immediately triggered Bollywood actor Richa Chaddha, who came out with a shocking taunt at the men in olive, mocking their resolve and ultimate sacrifice. Richa quipped, "Galwan says hi." A snide reference to Indian Army losing 20 braves who died protecting the Indian territory and inflicting massive toil on invading Chinese army in 2020. Richa's shocking insult of the Indian Army drew a deluge of criticism, with angry voices denouncing her, accusing her of demeaning the forces to serve her narrow political beliefs. Army veterans and experts urged her to not insult the Galwan heroes.
This must be understood by all the countrymen that Indian Defence Forces are in a position to retake this in a very swift and quick operation.
Indian brave hearts, they gave a befitting reply to China, and China had to suffer heavy losses in Galwan too. This New India is dealing with, having a very proactive approach.
Army veterans and defence experts didn't like comments made by Richa. Richa was also panned by Bollywood voices. While filmmaker Ashok Pandit has filed a complaint against her, BJP leaders have sought a boycott of her movies.
अब ये नौटंकी वाली माफी से काम नहीं चलेगा, पर हम सारे 140 करोड़ देशवासी यदि उसकी कोई फिल्में नहीं देखें तो क्या भविष्य में फिल्म जगत का कोई भी हमारे जवानों का इस प्रकार से अपमान करने की हिम्मत नहीं करेगा।
बॉम्बे की पुलिस से कहना चाहता हूं, मुंबई पुलिस से तुरंत इस रिचा चड्ढा के खिलाफ कार्रवाई करें, एप्रोप्रिएट धाराओं में मुकदमा दर्ज करें, ताकि ऐसे लोग जो भारत का अपमान करना, भारत की सेना का अपमान करना एंजॉय करते हैं, इनको मुंह तोड़ जवाब दिया जा सके, ऐसी जिंदगी में दोबारा कोशिश ना कर सके।
Mocking them, making fun of them is a regular feature by these urban actors like Richa Chaddha. I condemn from the core of my heart the statement issued by Richa Chaddha on Twitter.
Seeing the massive uproar, first Richa made her account private and then issued an apology, calling the jibe unintentional and flaunting her family's army background. Should celebrities use, insult and mock the army to score brownie points? Bureau Report, India Today.